The clang of swords is gone. Smoke rises over a shattered legion banner. One soldier, wounded and half-buried beneath broken shields, opens his eyes to silence. His comrades are gone. The battle is over, but his war has just begun. Left behind in a hostile land, betrayed by fate, haunted by loyalty, he faces a choice: vanish into oblivion or fight for redemption. This is the tragic story of power, shame. The midday sun hangs low beyond the ridge, casting a blood-red glow over the shattered field of battle. Each breath tastes of smoke and iron. The ground is strewn with bodies both Roman and barbarian, tangled in armor and fate. Spears and swords lie abandoned, their purposes fulfilled or forgotten. It's in this haunting stillness that we find our lone figure. Decimus, once a centurion amongst a proud legion, now silently paced by feverish cruelty of abandonment. Decimus crouches behind a shattered shield, half buried beneath a broken scutum, and the bodies of men, some familiar, some unknown. His sword lies just out of reach, wedged between bodies frozen in their final fight. Every breath, every heartbeat echoes, amplifying that initial flicker of fear lurking in his chest. He reaches for the sword, his fingers brushing the leather-wrapped hilt before recoiling at the pain from a deep gash in his forearm. Blood beads between his fingers. Once a warrior among many, he now stands alone. Hours earlier, Decimus stood within the phalanx, shoulder to shoulder with his legionaries. The standard of Legio XIII gleamed above them despite the rain falling in cold lashes. Centurion's bark rang through a cyclone of noise. Yet hindsight reveals the moment when fate shifted. The legion was routed, lines broke, and decimations were fought in scattered pockets. Decimus, caught in the chaos, pushed forward, only to be knocked unconscious by a blow to the head. The world spun into darkness, and when he awoke, all had changed. Now, he surveys the desolation with a shaking breath. Are they dead? Deserted? His only certainty is that the legion has left him behind. No horns sound, no comrade calls his name. The only voice he hears is the steady whisper of fear clawing at his mind. Wounds pulse. His tunic soaked in both the grime of battle and his own sweat weighs him down. He pushes himself upright with effort, muscles screaming. The wound slows his movement, and he knows blood loss may become the Emperor's executioner long before the next patrol finds him, if they even will. But Rome bred determination. Decimus tests his strength, pushes himself into motion. Every step is agony, but he forces himself forward. For now, survival is the only goal, not glory, not honor, but staying alive. As dusk deepens, Decimus crawls away from the battlefield toward a jagged grove of battered pine trees and boulders thinly cloaked in brambles. It seems a crude refuge, but refuge nonetheless. He drags himself into cover, his vision blurring as fatigue and pain entwine, threatening unconsciousness again. He shivers, racked by the cold and by blood loss. The sky above darkens. Stars emerge, cold and indifferent. Decimus whispers a prayer to Jupiter and to Mars, and to whichever god will answer that tomorrow brings either rescue or release. Night passes in fragments. He drifts in and out between fever and delirium. Shadows that flit and twist in the forest feel alive with menace, as if the dead lurk among the pines. Every snap of a twig ignites the dread of being discovered. No man was supposed to survive here alone, not in enemy territory. Raiders, wild beasts, the elements all might claim him. The forest air chills him further, and he curls into a ball, pressing his wound to staunch bleeding even as consciousness ebbs. When dawn finally slides across the horizon, weak and pale, Decimus is startled to see, not beasts, but a black wolf, lean, cautious at the edge of the clearing. The predator's gaze grips him. It pauses, hunger and curiosity, then it slinks away. Decimus exhales the breath he didn't know he'd held. Perhaps death missed him. Perhaps hope remains. By midday, he forces himself upright. The wound pulses with every heartbeat. irrigation of adrenaline and shock has numbed much pain. But the cost shows. Sweat drips from his brow. Dizziness tinges his vision. He knows he must move deeper into the woods or risk discovery as darkness returns. He tests the wound, tears at his torn tunic to wrap it more tightly. Pain flares, weakening him further. But he digs deeper. Memories surge: the smell of Rome, the cataphractoid training fields, the cheering of fellow legionnaires back in the colonnaded courtyards. These memories sharpen his resolve. He fights the temptation to let despair overtake him. Determination sees him stand, stagger, and journey onward. The forest swallows him, sound and scent of battle falling into a distant echo as he plunges deeper into survival. As the hours pass, Decimus orders his ragged breaths. He moves from cover to cover. Every fallen branch, every outcropped rock could conceal danger: enemy patrols, bandits, or worse. But it could also provide sanctuary. He navigates through dirt-caked pines, following a memory of the terrain where his legion had planned to retreat toward a friendly outpost west of the ridge. The journey is measured in agonizing inches. Every step risks reopening the wound. Every breath drips blood. Yet every inch forward is a stand against erasure. Decimus presses onward under a sky that grows colder and more unyielding. His wounds, once numbed by shock, now send sharp reminders of his plight with every heartbeat. The forest thins briefly, revealing sloping hills scarred by chariots and banners, remnants of the battle he barely escaped. Dark clouds gather overhead, the silence broken only by the whisper of wind and the muted cries of distant birds. Each step is a negotiation between his will to live and the relentless pull of exhaustion. He forces himself to climb a low ridge, legs trembling, every muscle screaming for reprieve. The landscape beyond, a patchwork of fields and faint smoke plumes, is eerily silent. There are no plumes of organized smoke from campfires, no dark figures patrolling yet. Decimus knows he's in hostile territory, and visibility does not guarantee safety. Far worse lies in complacency. So he descends into a field of wild grasses, using the tall stalks as cover. His head curls over, and he whispers prayers to Mercury. God of travelers, may the wings of fortune find him. As midday chases away the chill, Decimus discovers a shallow stream. He collapses beside it and drinks eagerly, cutting off a ribbon of his tunic to bandage the wound temporarily with the cool water's cleansing touch. His breathing steadies, and with the stream's whisper as company, he allows himself a single moment of clarity enough to plan. His mind, though clouded with fatigue and pain, recalls how legionnaires once learned to orient by the sun and waterways. He follows the stream downstream. Perhaps it leads to a settlement, a road, or enemy encampment. Perhaps to rescue. With cautious optimism, Decimus edges forward until, just beyond a bend, he sees footprints booted, recently made, passing through muddy soil. He freezes. A cold spike of terror spikes through him. Enemy scouts. A Roman supply party? He cannot tell. Leaning low, he studies the prints, noting crude, untrimmed nails that suggest barbarians, wider pattern. Without much deliberation, he retreats into the brush and presses on in a new direction, driven by instinct rather than strategy. Night comes again, with heavier breaths and stinging raindrops pattering like judgment on exposed skin. Decimus shelters beneath a fallen log and shielded rock, huddled and shaking. The candle of hope flutters, but flickers. Sleep is lethal in this place. Every night brings invisible threats: wolves, nightmares, raiders. In the thin half-light, his mind races back to the Legion's motto: Audentes fortuna juvat, fortune favors the bold. Not now, he thinks bitterly. Now, silence favors survival. Morning light reveals distant smoke across a ridge. A plume curling upward like a beacon. Could it be rescue? Or an enemy watch fire? Decimus, torn between desperation and caution, crawls forward. His eyes run on the wind, trying to discern any movement near the smoke's origin. The plume drifts over what might be a hamlet's ruins or a small military outpost. Either way, shelter and hostilities wait. His body trembles, but his resolve is iron. He picks his way forward, each movement a gamble between visibility and need. He approaches a structure half-built, half-collapsed, built of stone weathered by wind. Could serve as shelter if uninhabited. He slips inside, and inside he finds relief. A dry room scattered with worn straw and empty pottery. None live here. Allowing himself to rest momentarily, he lays on the straw. But again, exhaustion warps into delirium. In that state between sleep and waking, he dreams of the battlefield, the cries, the flames, the faces of comrades he failed to save. He wakes with a start, gasping, tears blurring the dank interior. Rising, he chants a verse from the hymns of Mars. Spartum noctis es, hanc exorna. You are born for hardship, embellish it. A reminder from home, a flicker of pride amid despair. He spends careful minutes tending his wound again. Rudimentary dressing, using herbs from the forest that his mother once harvested back in Roman hills while time. Yarrow planned by years of knowledge he never thought to use beyond camp kitchens. He patches the gash as best he can. Pain washes through his consciousness, yet he steadies his breath. The healing sting is accompanied by a clarity he had not felt since the battle's first moments. His instincts sharpen. Even wounded, he can survive. As the day drifts into afternoon, Decimus ventures out again, skirting thick briar and winding rock, following the stream's flow. He moves slowly, but deliberately. He reaches a low hill crest and peeks over to see a column of hardy warriors crossing open ground, Roman armor glinting. Legionnaires. A supply escort? A relief force? Tears threaten, but he restrains them. The last sliver of strength he reserves for motion. He lowers himself and navigates toward them. When he finally crosses into their sight, frail and bloodied, the soldiers blink. His tunic is torn, his face gaunt with years of hardship, though only days have passed. Recognition flickers surreal, as if from a faded memory. One officer moves forward with a barked command. Centurion? The name slips past his lips. Decimus. The rush of relief sweeps through him, physical and overwhelming. He collapses to his knees, the patrol raising him gently, half shocked, half heroic. They carry him into their camp. Within moments, the layers of armor and tattered wrap are removed. The wound is dressed by a medic with swift efficiency. Handfuls of water, bread, and honey, his strength returns, slow but certain. He is alive. As twilight falls, Decimus lies in a small tent, leaning on a cot. A messenger, breathless, enters. The campaign is resuming. He whispers of another battle ahead, of loyalties strained, of power shifts and treacherous roads. Decimus listens. He is no longer the man who collapsed alone in a war-racked forest. He has faced oblivion, and the journey back from it has changed him. The cost of loyalty, the weight of shame, the destiny of a soldier revived, etched into his bones. The scent of burning oil and wet leather hangs heavy in the Legion camp. Soldiers mill about like shadows cleaning weapons, sharing laughter, passing flasks of watered wine. But in one corner, under the tattered flap of a medic's tent, Decimus lies awake, staring at the canvas ceiling above. The pain in his side has dulled, but the weight in his chest has not. It isn't the wound that aches now, it's the question. What am I now that I've come back? They greet him as a brother. A few old comrades clasp his forearm with hesitant respect. Others look away, shamefaced. He was left behind, forgotten in the frenzy of retreat. Was it an oversight? A judgment? He doesn't ask. Not yet. He simply nods. A ghost among the living. In the days that follow, Decimus walks again. He trains quietly, returns to routine oiling armor, tightening Gladius straps, attending formation drills. But the world moves differently now. He listens more, speaks less. In every whispered conversation, every half glance, he senses the unease. No one truly expected him to survive. And that survival, instead of celebration, casts a strange shadow. What does it mean when a soldier comes back from the dead? The truth is, men fear reminders of their own weakness. And Decimus, once a symbol of strength, now reflects their shame. One afternoon, as the sun beats down like iron, he is summoned before the legate. The commander's tent is quiet, cool, and hung with banners. The legate, a broad-shouldered man named Pulcher, regards him with unreadable eyes. "You should have died on that field," he says flatly, not cruelly. "Men who are left behind don't return." Decimus answers only with silence. "You were not abandoned," Pulcher continues, though he doesn't sound convinced. "We thought you were lost. The standard was falling. Our lines were breaking. Decisions had to be made. And they were," Decimus says softly. "I understand." But he doesn't. Not entirely. The battlefield demands sacrifice, he knew that. But he had fought for the Legion's honor, led men into the heart of the bloodshed. And when the dust cleared, they hadn't even searched for him. Pulcher studies him. "You've been recommended for honors," he finally says, "but you'll be transferred. New cohort, fresh campaign, no questions." It isn't a reward. It's a dismissal with gold trim. Decimus leaves the tent with his jaw tight and his hands clenched. His next assignment is in Britannia, across the stormy sea. In the north, where mists swallow men whole and rebellions never sleep. A place they send soldiers who ask too many questions. That night, he walks beyond the outer perimeter of the camp. The stars overhead shine cold and distant, the same ones that watched him crawl bleeding through the woods. He kneels by a dying fire, alone, and digs his fingers into the earth. The soil crumbles beneath his nails. He feels its weight, its silence. He thinks of the faces he saw in his fevered dreams. Lucius, who died clutching his chest. Marcus, the boy with freckles and a shaking sword. Soldiers whose names the Empire will never carve into marble. Did they know they were being left behind? Did they scream when the horns called retreat? The thought makes his stomach twist. A few nights later, he prepares for departure. His armor, once scorched and dented, is newly polished. But it feels like borrowed skin. His scars still itch beneath the bronze. As he mounts his horse, a young soldier runs to him green-eyed, barely a man. "Centurion," he says breathlessly, "is it true that you walked for days alone? That wolves followed your scent?" Decimus smiles faintly. "No, only ghosts." The boy laughs nervously, unsure if it's a joke. On the long road to Britannia, Decimus rides with a small detachment. They travel through ruins and rebuilding towns, past statues of emperors and graves of forgotten men. At every milestone, he watches the expressions of the younger soldiers, sees their eagerness, their belief in glory. He envies them, just a little. He no longer believes in glory. In Britannia, the wind howls like prophecy. The Legion fort stands like a scar on the high cliffs. Mud clings to boots and the air tastes of iron. But the danger is real, and Decimus finds strange comfort in that. At least here, the enemy wears a face, not silence. He commands well. The men follow him. In battle, he is fearless not because he seeks death, but because he has already met it. Word spreads. The centurion who returned from the dead. Some call him cursed, others blessed. At night, he writes letters he never sends to comrades lost, to commanders who forgot him, to his younger self. They are not angry, just honest. You were a weapon once, honed and loyal, but when you broke, they simply reached for another. That is the way of empires. Remember it. Months pass. Then years. The empire continues. It always does. Wars rise and fall like tides. Emperors change. Cities burn and are rebuilt. But in the cold north, among mist and blood, a legend grows of a Roman soldier who defied death, not through strength alone, but through sheer will. A man who walked back from oblivion, bearing the weight of abandonment without letting it crush him. And one day, when Decimus is old and the sword grows too heavy, he lays it down, not in surrender, but in understanding. He was left behind, forgotten, but he found something far greater than honor. If this story gripped you, if you felt the weight of Decimus's journey and the forgotten faces of soldiers like him, then let us know in the comments below. Would you have survived the walk back? Do you think loyalty to the Empire was worth the sacrifice? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories of ancient empires and the forgotten warriors who shaped them. And remember, history isn't always written in marble. Sometimes it's buried in blood and silence.